I walked into the sleek, glass-walled conference room, heart hammering against my ribs like it wanted to escape. The city skyline stretched beyond the windows. Glittering with wealth I was still clawing my way toward, and at the head of the polished table sat my billionaire boss, arms crossed, eyes cold and sharp like twin blades. I had worked for months to get to this point, juggling impossible deadlines, endless revisions, and his constant, cutting scrutiny, all for this single moment. My ambition had carried me this far. The desperate hope that one success might finally earn his respect. But now, standing here, I felt that familiar pit of anxiety twist in my stomach. He didn't even glance up. "You have 5 minutes," he said, voice low, dismissive, like I was already failing before I began. 5 minutes to close this deal, or don't bother wasting anyone's time. His words hit harder than any critique I'd faced before, mocking every ounce of determination I had clung to. I swallowed hard, tried to steady my shaking hands, knowing that in these 5 minutes everything could be decided. My reputation, my future, the fragile thread of confidence I had fought to maintain. I took a breath, forcing myself to focus, but the doubt gnawed at the edges of my mind. What if I wasn't enough? Every step toward my desk felt heavier than the last, like the air itself was thick with judgment. My colleagues barely glanced at me, whispering under their breaths, their eyes flicking to my boss for approval before smirking at my attempts to contribute. I remembered the early days, when I had spent late nights compiling reports no one noticed, only to have ideas stolen or dismissed at meetings. I could still hear Jenna's laugh in my head, mocking my presentation with a casual, "Are you sure you're cut out for this?" The memory stung as sharply now as it did then. My boss's favoritism was obvious. He praised Michael for half-finished slides, offered him opportunities before I even got a chance to speak. And there I was, always the understudy, the overlooked, the one everyone expected to stumble. The internal voice I had fought to quiet whispered again. Maybe I wasn't good enough. But amidst the anxiety, a spark of stubborn defiance flared. If they expected me to fail, I would prove them wrong. This wasn't just about the deal. It was about showing that the hours, the sacrifices, and the quiet perseverance I had poured into this job mattered. And maybe, just maybe, it was time for the past to stop defining me. I couldn't help but flash back to my first year on the job, when every task felt like walking a tightrope over a pit of judgment. I remembered the first presentation I had botched, my slides full of errors, my voice quivering as I tried to explain the numbers, and how my boss had barely masked his irritation, shaking his head and muttering under his breath. I had wanted to disappear into the floor, to erase the memory entirely. But over time, each mistake became a lesson. I stayed late nights, memorizing processes, practicing pitches in front of the bathroom mirror, rewriting emails until they were flawless. I remembered the small victories, too, landing a minor client after months of rejection, earning the quiet nod of approval from a colleague who had doubted me, feeling that rare flicker of pride when a project finally went off without a hitch. Those moments were brief, almost imperceptible victories, but they built something stronger in me. Resilience, patience, and an unwavering determination to prove that I belonged. Every stumble, every overlooked effort had led me to this moment. And despite the fear gnawing at my gut, I knew I had learned enough to face the challenge ahead. The conference room felt impossibly small as the client representatives settled in, their polished smiles doing nothing to calm the storm of nerves in my chest. My boss leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, watching me with that same piercing, dismissive gaze that had haunted me since day one. "You have 5 minutes," he said, voice dripping with disbelief, "to convince them this deal is worth their time, or you've already failed." My stomach lurched. 5 minutes, 5 heartbeats in a world where years of preparation barely seemed enough. I could hear my colleagues shifting in their seats, some sneering, others whispering under their breath, their skepticism almost palpable. I felt a flash of everything I had endured, every dismissed idea, every late-night effort, every time I had been overlooked. But it wasn't anger that surged. It was the tiniest spark of defiance. I will not let him win this, I thought, heart racing, mind whirring through every detail I had memorized. The client's expectant eyes met mine, searching for confidence I wasn't sure I had. And yet, I swallowed the fear, straightened my spine, and took the first shaky step toward the pitch. The seconds ticked by, each one a reminder that this moment could make or break me. Could I really pull this off? The question hung in the air, unspoken but suffocating, as I prepared to dive into the unknown. My voice wavered as I began, the carefully rehearsed words tangling in my throat for just a fraction of a second, enough for the room to feel suspended in judgment. I caught my boss's smirk from across the table, that silent, cutting approval of my flinch, and my chest tightened. The client raised an eyebrow, polite but questioning, sensing my uncertainty. For a moment I felt small, inconsequential, every doubt from my past surging forward. The mistakes, the overlooked achievements, the whispered ridicule of colleagues echoing in my mind. And yet, beneath that trembling exterior, I could feel the raw potential coiling inside me, waiting for release. The contrast was brutal. Here I was, visibly fragile, yet armed with knowledge and strategy they didn't see yet. I swallowed hard, forcing my hands to stop shaking, my heart to slow. Every second felt like a chasm between who I appeared to be and who I knew I could become. The tension in the room grew, the unspoken question lingering in the air. Would I crumble, or would the power I had built quietly inside me finally emerge? And then it hit me, sudden and sharp, like a flash of light in the haze of my panic, a detail everyone else had overlooked. The client's contract had a clause buried deep in legal jargon, something they assumed was standard, but I saw the leverage it offered. My pulse quickened as I realized I could pivot the pitch entirely around this point, turning what seemed like a weakness into an undeniable advantage. Empowerment surged through me, raw and exhilarating, washing away the lingering fear. I felt the shift in the room before anyone else did. The client's eyebrows lifted subtly, intrigued, while my boss's smirk faltered just slightly, betraying the tiniest flicker of uncertainty. My thoughts raced faster than I could speak, mapping out the argument, anticipating questions, and preparing counterpoints. This wasn't just about saving the deal anymore. It was about reclaiming every moment I'd been underestimated, proving that the small victories I'd fought for in silence had led me to this point. For the first time in the room, I felt fully in control, the impossible suddenly within reach, and I knew that from here, there was no turning back. My mind raced, a whirlwind of numbers, possibilities, and potential objections, each one colliding with the next. I scanned the contract again, noticing tiny inconsistencies and opportunities that everyone else had ignored. Every overlooked detail felt like a secret weapon waiting to be used, and I could almost hear the whisper in my head. If you fail, this is over. The client's eyes were on me, expectant but impatient, while my boss leaned back, arms crossed, exuding that calm cruelty that made failure feel inevitable. I couldn't let them see how fast my heart was pounding or how shaky my hands felt. I had to turn chaos into strategy, hesitation into confidence. I mapped out my approach mentally, arranging my points like pieces of a puzzle, anticipating questions before they were asked. Every second counted, every choice mattered. The pressure was suffocating, but within it, a fierce clarity emerged. This was my moment to prove myself, not just to the boss or the clients, but to every version of me who had been doubted, dismissed, or underestimated. I tightened my jaw, took a deep breath, and prepared to act. I took a slow breath and leaned forward, letting my voice carry a calm confidence I didn't feel a moment ago. If we adjust the terms here, I said, pointing to the clause no one had noticed, we can not only secure your investment but also reduce your risk by nearly half. This structure guarantees the returns you were hoping for, without compromising flexibility. The client's eyes widened, nodding as they scribbled notes, and I could feel the shift in the room, their attention now fully on me. My boss's jaw tightened, his smirk vanishing, replaced by a flash of disbelief. "Wait, that's... You're suggesting we..." he stammered, eyes darting between me and the client. I held his gaze briefly before returning to the client, confident in the logic I had meticulously pieced together. The power dynamics had changed, if only slightly, but it was enough. I felt a surge of vindication. The room that had expected me to fail now leaned in, hanging on my every word. For the first time, I realized I wasn't just surviving this challenge. I was controlling it. The room fell into a tense hush, the kind that presses against your skin and makes every heartbeat loud. My boss's eyes narrowed, his posture stiffening as he attempted to reclaim authority. But the words faltered on his tongue. He opened his mouth, closed it, then muttered something about checking the numbers later, clearly grasping for control that had already slipped through his fingers. Around the table, my colleagues exchanged subtle glances, whispers catching like sparks, as they realized I had outmaneuvered not just the client, but the person who had always belittled me. A quiet satisfaction swelled inside me, a vindication I hadn't dared imagine in months of doubt and scrutiny. The client nodded again, intrigued and impressed, reinforcing the silent confirmation that I had succeeded. For the first time, I felt the weight of every underestimated effort, every overlooked contribution, tipping the balance in my favor. The air seemed charged with acknowledgement. I was no longer just the timid employee. I was the one who had changed the game. I took a deep breath and delivered the final part of my pitch with steady conviction, laying out the numbers, projections, and risk mitigations in a way that left no room for doubt. The clients leaned forward, eyes wide, nodding in unison, and I could feel the energy in the room shift entirely. This wasn't just a win anymore, it was a statement. "We're ready to move forward," one of them said, extending a hand with an enthusiasm I hadn't anticipated. Relief and exhilaration flooded through me, a tide of validation crashing over years of self-doubt and overlooked effort. My boss's face went pale, his mouth opening and closing as he struggled for words, realizing in front of everyone that he had misjudged me. The whispers around the room swelled into a quiet acknowledgement from colleagues who had doubted me all along. I felt a rush of vindication as he stepped back, defeated, a subtle but unmistakable recognition of my triumph written across his face. The deal was sealed, a $5 million agreement that I had turned from an impossible challenge into undeniable success. The room buzzed with a sense of awe, the power reversal complete. The person who had mocked and underestimated me now watched as I stood victorious, every expectation shattered. I allowed myself a brief, quiet smile, savoring the moment that transformed years of struggle into undeniable achievement. The room hummed with subdued chatter as colleagues offered congratulatory nods and quiet smiles. Their skepticism replaced with admiration I had longed to earn. My boss remained silent, leaning back in his chair, a faint tightening around his eyes betraying a grudging acknowledgement of my accomplishment. I could feel the weight of months, even years, of overlooked effort lifting, replaced with a steady, empowering pride that warmed me from the inside out. I replayed every moment leading up to this, every mistake, every late night, every time I had been dismissed, and realized they had all built the foundation for this victory. Relief washed over me in soft waves, mingled with exhilaration. I had not only succeeded under impossible pressure, but I had done it on my own terms. For the first time, I felt truly seen, not just for my skills, but for my perseverance, my resilience, and my determination. Standing there, amidst the quiet acknowledgement of my colleagues and the silent respect of the boss who had doubted me, I understood the power of believing in myself, and that realization was worth more than any deal. Sitting at my desk after the meeting, I let the adrenaline ebb, leaving behind a steady pulse of triumph that I could finally savor. The deal was done, the clients impressed, and my boss's arrogance quietly humbled, yet I hadn't needed to gloat or humiliate anyone to make my point. That subtlety made the victory even sweeter. Karma had unfolded in its own way, precise and undeniable, and I had been the orchestrator. I reflected on how far I had come, from the timid employee whose ideas were dismissed, to the person who had turned a 5-minute ultimatum into a multi-million-dollar win. Confidence settled into my bones, a quiet but unshakable force that no doubt or mockery could touch. I realized this wasn't just about money or recognition. It was about proving to myself that my patience, intelligence, and resilience mattered. Every sneer, every overlooked effort, every whisper of doubt had fueled this moment, and now I could finally exhale, knowing I had claimed my space, earned my respect, and done so with grace. As I left the conference room, the city skyline gleamed behind me like a promise, every reflection a reminder of how far I had come. Colleagues passed with subtle nods, some offering small smiles that hinted at newfound respect, and I caught a brief, unreadable glance from my boss, silent acknowledgement that I had changed the game. I felt a surge of possibility, imagining the doors this success would open, the challenges I could now face with confidence and poise. And yet, even as I savored the victory, a tiny spark of uncertainty flickered. Who would underestimate me next? Which impossible task would test me in ways I hadn't yet imagined? That tension, that thrill of the unknown, lingered like a pulse, promising that this was only the beginning. I straightened my shoulders, letting the confidence settle into every movement, knowing I was ready. The future was wide open, and I intended to seize every moment, proving that no one could predict the heights I could reach.